Hi, I'm Sheri Ross, and this is SLV Life, everything San Lorenzo Valley in Santa Cruz County, California. Today, we are featuring David Blume, Chief Executive of Blume Distillation in Watsonville, California. David is a pioneer in regenerative agriculture, organic farming, and converting food waste to fuel and nutrients. He's the director of the International Institute for Ecological Agriculture. David is a consultant to energy and agriculture ministers and works with farmers and municipalities around the world to stop deforestation and fossil fuel-based toxins. Welcome, David. Thank you for being here.
Well, hi, Sheri. Glad to make it.
Blume Distillation has projects in the U.S., South America, and is planning to install distilleries in Watsonville, Richmond, California, and India. He has published the award-winning book, Alcohol Can Be a Gas, which is used as curriculum and details aspects of growing food for fuel, distillation processes, and co-products that join the cycle of regeneration. Tell us about your mission, David.
Well, I wanted to make sure I picked a mission that was, adequately challenged to meet. So my mission's simple. I want everybody to eat good, healthy food and have all the energy they need. And, I sleep well at night knowing that's what I'm working for.
Absolutely. When did Blume Distillation and your organization start producing ethanol?
Well, I've been doing this off and on since the late 70s. During the first gasoline crisis, in fact, that happened when we had the first Arab oil embargoes on the United States. And those of us with gray hair remember that, but that was a period where you actually could not get gas at any price. There was rationing. Every other day you could get 10 gallons, and then the station would be empty and you'd have to go somewhere else and wait 3 miles in line. So we have had that history in the United States, and that's what started my work in teaching people how to make alcohol to replace gasoline.
And tell us about the original flower farm and Whiskey Hill.
Well, here, here we are today, fast forward from when I started the whole projects in the past. And in Watsonville, we were able to buy one of the former rose farms. It's a 15-acre site with 5 acres of greenhouse, which is more greenhouse than the USDA currently has for research. So
wow.
We're able to do quite a bit of research there and grow a lot of warm weather crops and energy crops in those greenhouses.
So Whiskey Hill was an original flower farm, and when you took it over, you converted their flower operation to your semi-tropical indoor operation.
Well, actually, Whiskey Hill is the original name of Freedom, California, or local town. And Whiskey Hill used to be, if you look on WikiLeaks, in Google, you'll find it was the wickedest town in the West. And so it's where Santa Cruz went to party, along Corralitos Creek, where all the bars and gunfights and brothels. And after Prohibition, the town gentrified and changed the name to Freedom. So Whiskey Hill Farms, well, where my farm is where the distilleries were during that early wild era.
Interesting. So you're carrying on a tradition of distillery at the same location.
There we are.
Wonderful. Let's take a look at the aerial view of the facility of your organization. We have a aerial overview. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, it looks rather exotic, but you'll see the dark rectangles are the greenhouses that we have, the glass and steel World War II greenhouses, and our research facilities in the center, the steel buildings, and we have fields around it where we also cultivate outdoor crops that we demonstrate the production of energy from So we have a lot of facility to do the different kinds of work we do and grow the crops we grow, as well as do education.
Wonderful. And we also have a picture of an outside view of the other side, I think, of your organization, where you can tell us about some of the outdoor terracing that you have.
Yes. Well, I do ecological land design around the world on the pretty large scale, like trying to fix watersheds and other things that have been damaged in the past. So one of the techniques we use is to take land that's being eroded and we terrace it, but not just to create flat areas. We also impound the water that falls on it when rainfall falls on that terrace. It goes to the back of the terrace, soaks in deeply into the ground, where it can water trees and everything else instead of washing the soil away. And we have kind of record rains this year, and on our terraces, the water just soaks in, and within 3 or 4 years, we have 100 years worth of irrigation water stored underneath the ground. So we do that around the world, and we're looking at stopping the Sahara Desert from overwhelming Ghana, and we're being asked to bring our expertise to bear there, as well as other places.
So the terracing captures the water in multiple stages and takes advantage of gravity, utilizes gravity to continue to water at the different levels.
Yeah, the idea is that instead of letting water run off, my attitude is, if it falls on my property, it's mine. So I'm not going to let it go away. So if I soak it in deep-rooted things like trees can reach that water over time and use it. And if you keep saturating the ground with that water, well, it goes deeper and deeper until it finds an aquifer, and then the water can flow out of that and go into a creek or a spring or whatever. So we're rehydrating the land when we stop the runoff of water and trap that water in the landscape.
As opposed to a single level that would cause massive runoff and erosion, I imagine, as well.
Well, imagine on the other side of the hill from us here, where we cut down all the redwoods on the east side of our coast ranges in 10 years. There was 10 feet deep of topsoil over there held by all those redwoods. And within a couple of generations, all that washed off into San Francisco Bay. And so San Francisco Bay went from being an average of 30 feet deep to 9 feet deep, because all that wonderful soil washed into the bay where it went to waste. And what did we have left? We had clay topsoil, and instead of a rainforest, based on redwoods, well, then we had no rain, because trees are essential to making that happen, and we became an oak woodlands ecosystem, because oak trees are adapted to really dry conditions. So within human memory, we turned the peninsula from a temperate rainforest into a near desert just by cutting the trees down. And so what I do is go back and try to restore the water gathering parts of land so we can reestablish forests and repair the damage we've done. Because, sustainability, well, that's a good idea. What does sustainability mean? It means let's make sure that the future generations have what we have today. It's sustained. But in working with Native Americans, what I found they say is, when are you going to fix the stuff you screwed up, rather than just not damage anymore? So regenerative agriculture and regenerative design is using everything we do with the land to heal and improve the land while we're maybe creating a crop or trapping water or whatever. So it's much more ambitious than just simple sustainability.
Right, where you would have a clean slate to start from. You're doing repair work, and I'm sure the list is endless in terms of areas that could use attention for regeneration.
In America, we only have 2% of our original forests, mostly in Idaho at this point, and everything else has been cut 2, 3, 4 times. So we have a lot of work to do to bring even our own country back up to the kind of ecological health it could have.
Oh, yes. Well, I am thrilled to have you here and to learn even a fraction of some of the projects that you have. So today we're going to do an overview with hope that we can revisit in more detail some of the specifics that you're working on. I've been to the facility a couple of times now, and the last time Mayor Delgado was there, and Mayor Delgado of Marina visited, and you can tell us a little bit of that, and then also who else was there this week?
Well, sure. You know, we met Mayor Delgado at a local industry get together, and we talked a little bit about what we do, and he came out to see our distillery and our ecological designs. And the thing about Marina, which a lot of people don't know, is it's the Monterey County Regional Recycling Center. So the landfills there, all the recycling of metals and paper and everything else goes on there, and it's a state-of-the-art facility. And yet it's taking on more and more and is overwhelmed at this point from things like food processing waste or these kinds of things, which is now illegal to put in landfills in California. Well, California is a food-producing state. We have a lot of food-producing surplus. But if you bury it in a landfill, it makes methane. Mm-hmm. And methane is a much more potent climate change gas than carbon dioxide. So California said, no more of that. You have to do something else with the like apple pulp or grape pulp from the wine industry or et cetera, these kinds of things. And so we're talking with counties around the state about what to do. And Mayor Delgado said, wow, this would solve so many of our problems if we can divert that waste and make something good from it, because we ferment it and make alcohol, which would be a great fuel to run city vehicles or the local bus system, you know, for the kids. And it's absolutely clean as a fuel. So everyone wins if we take that otherwise surplus food material and make it into both alcohol and fertilizer to put back on the land that isn't fossil fuel based.
And that's before it gets mixed in with the landfill, because you need to keep it separate to...
Yes, municipal solid waste, which is everything all thrown together, well, we can't really untangle that mess. But if before it's all mixed together, we can take what's coming out of a particular food processing outlet, and that gets diverted to the facility we'd like to build in Marina, then it doesn't go to the landfill, and we take care of it.
And we have such massive food production facilities just in this area that I would imagine they could supply quite a large distillery and produce quite a volume of fuel.
Absolutely. It's hard to imagine just how powerful the agriculture is of California. In Northern California alone, my understanding is that all the farms that supply the Driscoll's company generate 500 million pounds of strawberries a year. It's a lot of fruit.
Yeah.
And what is fruit? But it's solar energy that's been made into solid form. It makes carbohydrates. Well, carbo is carbon dioxide, hydrate is water, and sunlight glues those together into sugars and starches and fiber and that kind of thing. So we're really talking about a solid form of solar energy, and yet, you know, the market is very fussy. So 25, 35, 40% of the crop might not ever get to market. It may just get left in the field. Well, we'll take that stuff gladly,
right,
and make alcohol with it, and we might harvest the seeds for use with as an exfoliant in soap, or we might extract the scent and the flavor from the waste strawberries and use that for all the products that strawberry flavoring and smell are used for. So we don't waste anything in Blume Distillation. What we figure out is taking a surplus and making it into something that people need.
Yes, and we'll talk about the co-processes and cycling, the result of distillation into other areas of your operation. So also you had mentioned that you had Panetta there last week as well.
Yes, our congressman.
Congressman Panetta.
Yes, it was an exciting visit. You know, it's always great when you get to actually talk to your government and be a source of information. And Panetta, you know, the congressman showed up and found what we were doing very interesting. And he interviewed our workers. He wanted to make sure that we had a good workplace for our workers. And he also looked at all the different ecological aspects of what we're doing. So he saw us make methane with the byproducts of making alcohol. And that methane, which of course is natural gas, you know, but made from the organic matter, well, that goes back to run our boiler, which makes the energy to make the alcohol. So we don't buy anything from PG&E to make our alcohol. In other words, we make our own energy to do that. He also saw some of our solar projects, like where we have special transparent panels that trap yellow and blue light and send that to the grid, you know, photovoltaic panel, but lets the light through that plants need to grow. And so we get double duty from those solar panels. And that was a local innovation from UC Santa Cruz, which spun up a company called Soliculture.
Yeah, we're going to show that.
Perfect.
Yeah, I have that later. So Congressman Panetta talked about incorporating some of the history and research and operation modeling that you have into some future projects, not only to reduce pollution in California, but to help a lot of agriculture organizations communicate and to literally get involved with what happens to the products that they produce, the food. I don't want to call it food waste, but I think that's what we're talking about.
It's all kinds of agricultural waste. But, you know, what's going on right now is a historic time. You know, the change in Congress in the last election is a sea change from supporting of oil and coal companies, which is what the last administration is doing. And the new House is pushing forward on something called the New Green Deal. So the idea of that is to take the United States and instead of being a proponent of the old way of doing things with fossil fuels, let's go ahead and show that we can make money and take care of the environment and clean up the messes we've made in the past and make jobs in the process. And so I think when the congressman saw what we were doing and saw that we fulfill all those functions, and making money part's important, because if you don't make money, no one's going to care what you do. So if we can show that there's different ways to make money other than invest in coal companies, well, wouldn't people rather buy into something that makes the planet better than just another investment to make only money and not as much as we would make?
Absolutely, and just people working together locally in different areas of the process that affect all areas, whether it's transportation, which we're also going to talk about, education, and all the areas of agriculture and composting, etc. So we will get into some of this stuff.
Well, now in that comment, you know, about how does it affect the local area, if you look in the Midwest where alcohol is made at 200 very large plants, you find in the towns around those alcohol plants, which are making alcohol for mixture with gasoline to clean up the emissions of gasoline. Well, those towns, wow, the pools are open. The libraries are open every day. Schools have what they need because there's so much more employment when you're making renewable energy and everybody is paying taxes, that suddenly you have a healthy economy. You know, instead of a coal miner town where there's nothing for people and all the money leaves the community and goes to an energy corporation. So when we talk about making alcohol as a basis of our energy economy, the benefits are spread throughout the population, and it's a democratic fuel because of that.
It touches everyone, and it's for many purposes productive, and we'll talk more about that as well. I'd like to move into one of your greenhouses. We have a photo, number 7, of one of your greenhouses, and you can see how massive they are. They're huge, and this one in particular shows turmeric in the background with some other in the front. So we could talk a little bit about your vast.
Well, it's always a challenge to make money in farming. It's there's a balance to be made between producing a lot of something and then having to sell it wholesale, which means everybody else makes the money except for the farmer. So, we had to thread the needle there to find something that would work well in this area. And so we had to discount opium. Well, that's illegal, and et cetera. So we had to look for something healthy, and that was turmeric, which is a very important new addition to our health and well-being library, you might say. It's been important for a couple of thousand years. So we started growing turmeric, and now Santa Cruz County is now the largest producer of turmeric in North America. And so we were proud of that, and we're able to supply people all over the country with this anti-inflammatory, anti-cancer, anti-high blood pressure, anti-diabetes herbal drug, which people have been using for thousands of years en masse. So that's part of what we're doing there, showing farmers you can pick an unusual crop, find out where that market is, and if you grow that instead of corn or soybeans, well, you can make a profit and afford to stay on the land. And so that's partly what we're demonstrating there. But the things in the foreground are different energy crops that we demonstrate, that we can make alcohol and byproducts from. And so we have a whole selection of different things like prickly pear cactus or mesquite or sugar beets or Jerusalem artichokes. We even have sugar cane in the greenhouse. All these things can be used to make alcohol and animal feed or human food.
Wonderful. Let's take a look at the next photo. There's another greenhouse photograph coming up.
We have quite a few greenhouses. So yes, actually, you're going to see right there on the left, that is sugar cane, which normally only grows in the tropics. But in our greenhouse, we're able to make that work because it doesn't freeze in the greenhouse. And in the foreground, we're growing a variety of eggplants and peppers and that in the winter, which is becoming more popular around the world to have greenhouse production so people have fresh fruit in the winter. Spain has 125 square miles of greenhouse now to supply food throughout the winter for Europe. And even in Canada, there's massive greenhouses so people have fresh food to eat. So it's where the world is going to have well-balanced meals year-round. But the byproduct from alcohol fuel, which is carbon dioxide, evil carbon dioxide, right? Well, when you make beer or wine, or you actually make bread, the yeast eat the sugar and give off alcohol, which of course we're using to make liquor or fuel or whatever, and they breathe out carbon dioxide. Well, the interesting thing about carbon dioxide, we breathe it out too, because we're animals, but plants breathe it in. And so when you put the carbon dioxide in the greenhouse, well, now you end up putting it where it's needed instead of throwing it out in the environment, and the plants gobble it up, and you get much more production per square foot when you use carbon dioxide because the plants can eat it. Now, in our local area, what's our new plant industry? Well, it's cannabis. And cannabis is taxed by the square foot in the greenhouse or wherever it's growing. So if you can get more production per square foot, well, that makes it those industries able to afford to pay the taxes. So by using CO2 from alcohol, we're able to increase production of that crop, and now those guys can be economically viable and pay the taxes, which are keeping our pools open, paying for our libraries, fixing our roads. So, alcohol and agriculture have a place where they meet, where the byproducts from alcohol are needed in agriculture, and this is a good example.
Absolutely, and So is there any part of the cannabis plant that can be used as fuel? Is it high enough in sugar to be able to function in distillation process?
Not really, because cannabis is mostly fiber. Now, technically, you can take fiber and like this cotton shirt here, for instance, which is made of cellulose, which is the fiber of cotton. In theory, that cellulose is made up of sugar, but it's really hard to break apart and make into alcohol. And although there's a lot of talk about cellulosic alcohol, it's really a distraction from what really works. And so it isn't ready for prime time, cellulosic alcohol. But the other thing we can do from cannabis, that's cannabis as a waste product, is all this leaf matter, which really shouldn't go to the landfill. Remember, that's a food processing waste going to the landfill. So the leaf matter actually is loaded with those beautiful green leaves, are loaded with protein. And with alcohol, we have a method where we can extract the protein, quite a lot of protein really, and use that for human food or animal feed instead of corn in the Midwest. So the cannabis industry, paradoxically, can also provide high quality protein that could be exported to developing countries where there's not enough protein. And we have a surplus of leaf here that needs to be dealt with.
And we have a surplus of the wrong food going into our cattle industry because they're not getting the protein-rich food, so the methane, it would be healthier for their bodies. And I've learned this from studying some of your materials. Once you feed them a higher protein without the sugar and starch, which is previously extracted, then they don't have the off-gassing and a lot of the problems that contribute to,
well, both poor health and also bad environmental problems. So, most of the alcohol in the United States is made from corn.
right.
Well, corn is about 2/3 starch and 1/3 protein and fat and good stuff. Well, we feed the corn to cattle because of the good stuff. It turns out cattle can't even digest starch. So that goes out in the manure, causing carbon dioxide, methane, and everything else. But now 40% of the corn in the United States first goes through an alcohol plant, and we only remove the starch. We don't touch the protein, we don't touch the fat. It's still there in the leftover byproduct. And when we feed that to cattle instead of the whole corn, they gain just as much weight as they would have eating the whole corn, because the starch was wasted anyway. So,
it was exacerbated in our environment because it comes out in a very bad way. And if all of the cattle industry just in the state of California were to take notice of this, then I would think, have a tremendous improvement in our results in reducing gases.
And it is, because what we do now is we take what's called dried distillers grains, the de-starched corn, and that's what comes to California because it's cheaper to ship. We've already gotten rid of the starch. And it's really good for dairy cows, which is what California excels at, is raising dairy more than beef, which is what's done other places.
Right.
So our dairy industry makes big use of the alcohol byproduct of distillers grains, and our cattle are healthier and they produce more milk because of it.
That's great. Well, I'm glad to hear that it's already in progress.
Absolutely.
So why alcohol fuel? Why is it a clean fuel?
Well, first of all, it's made from plants. So that automatically gives us some benefit, because plants breathe in CO2 from the general air. And we would generally agree that there's too much CO2 in the air from burning fossil fuels. So plants absorb that, make it into starches and sugars, which we make into alcohol. So we're drawing down the CO2 that's in the atmosphere to make a renewable fuel, which is not releasing new CO2 from underground, which is what we do with oil. So that's healthy. But when we burn alcohol, we don't have the same problems as oil, which has hundreds of different chemicals all thrown together. And when we burn them, they burn imperfectly and spew horrible toxic stuff into the air. So alcohol actually has 99+% less emissions than gasoline.
99%.
Plus. So when you go get smogged with an alcohol car, you got to tell the guy who's doing the smogging, because otherwise what happens is he puts the probe in the back of your exhaust pipe and he's looking at his machine and none of the needles are moving. So they begin to think there's something wrong with the machine because there's no pollution coming out of your car.
Running 100% pure
Alcohol, right? And
so
it's that clean, and basically, alcohol is as close to pollution-free as is possible to get.
Oh, that's great. Well, let's move into your indoor distillery. You have, what I did was I took a couple of photos and put them together. They're on two different sides of the room. But this is the distillery that you have in Watsonville.
Yes, this is our research distillery. It's capable of making 100,000 gallons per year. We don't make that much because we're really using it to experiment making different things into alcohol, everything from almond waste to raisins to candy. We have had dentists bring us tons of candy they bought back from the kids after Halloween. We've turned that into alcohol, as well as my old favorite is donuts, of course, because, well, police can only eat so many, and then, there's a lot of waste. And so donuts are nothing but starch and sugar and fat, and we can make alcohol from that just, like crazy. So
they don't eat them a lot. They have a lot every day because they can't store them or keep them for long, so they have to get.
They're so cheap to make. The last thing you want to do is run out of donuts because it's money you're not making. So they'd rather make extra because it's so cheap and have that left over to make sure they have enough to sell. So so bakery goods are good for making alcohol, as are juice pulps and soda syrup. We're talking to one big soda company now in Florida that wants us to take all the waste soda from cleaning out the bottling equipment every day, tens of thousands of gallons of sugary syrup.
Fantastic.
And instead of it going to the landfill and causing methane, they want us to make alcohol from it. So, it's this is one of those things where everyone wins, well, except the oil companies, but oh shucks.
Well, I'm sure they can figure out a way to get involved with clean energy as well.
They seem to. They're buying into alcohol plants because it's required to mix alcohol with gasoline now to reduce the pollution coming out of the tailpipe.
They have kids too.
Yes.
Now, as far as your distilleries, you sell models of distillery equipment. You go into towns and you evaluate what they can use, and you propose equipment. You produce and manufacture the equipment and provide installation, consulting, as well as ongoing support services. So that's a whole realm of, from beginning to end, to assure that it's a successful installation, that the equipment's running properly, because you designed and produced the equipment. You know that.
That's right.
You know that you can rely on it to perform as it's supposed to perform.
Yes, that's one of the aspects of what we do. And the other thing we're doing now, which has become important, is let's say we go to a cookie company that has all these broken cookies, and we say, well, you have all this waste that's going to the landfill. Wouldn't you like an alcohol plant here to turn all that waste cookie into profit? And they'd say, sure, but we already have a business to run. This is something extra. So what we're doing now is we're working with Santa Cruz County Bank right here locally to finance our building, owning, and operate distilleries next door to places that have waste. So the idea is investors come in and come up with about 20% of the money, because the bank doesn't put up all the money. The bank puts up 80%. And we then put up a plant, which is what we're trying to do now, both in Marina and Watsonville, is to pull together the investors for that. And we're very close to having them all. So then we build the plant and we operate it, and the investors make money. The bank gets paid back, and we continue to make money, and we can put up more plants.
So let's look at the model of the outdoor distillery. You will be looking at something of this size then in Watsonville, or?
This is a 5 million gallon per year alcohol plant we designed. And if you notice on the left, it's all looking like it's in boxes. And that's because it's prefabricated in shipping container type units, which we can ship anywhere and then snap together. So by prefabricating, we reduce the cost of building the factory by 2/3. And we're able to send these to the middle of the Amazon, which some Santa Cruz entrepreneurs that have an Amazon herb company want us to put an alcohol plant in the middle of the Amazon so they have the alcohol to extract the Amazon herbs and send the extracts to Europe and the United States. We can deliver this plant with helicopters. In fact, the Peruvian military has offered to use their helicopters to drop the components into the rainforest where they're assembled, and then the whole plant is self-sufficient, makes its own electricity and natural gas and runs, and all the indigenous people who bring in the herbs share in the profit. So,
and they're not shipping the extra weight. They're lightening up by extracting and
just
shipping
sending the
only
final product.
what they have. Yes.
Yes.
And you're also, okay, so you said that is the size that you would be building in Watsonville? Or?
We actually build several sizes.
What about Watsonville? You're looking at an outdoor facility there.
The 5 million gallon plant is what we want to build in Watsonville. We have large juice processors in Watsonville. We have huge industries like the berry industry with a lot of waste. And actually, we're one of the only people in the world who know how to take artichoke waste and make alcohol from it.
Oh.
It has an unusual carbohydrate in it, which a lot of us have heard of, called inulin. A lot of people know about that as a prebiotic. It's a carbohydrate that we don't actually digest, but bacteria and yeast do, and so you can use it to grow all the goodies that you can then consume in capsules, whatever, that are good for your digestion. And so inulin also is a sugar that makes itself is a sweet sugar that does not affect diabetics because we don't digest it. So there's a lot of good uses for inulin, and it's a byproduct or a surplus from our artichoke industry. And so we'd like to help the artichoke farmers make a little more profit by getting something from their leaves, and therefore, using more of the product and less of it goes to waste.
There are a lot of artichokes here, so
I've noticed that.
We would all love to see that happen. Let's hear a little bit about Richmond. You're also looking at a facility there.
Well, Richmond's an interesting place because it's the largest green city government in the country. The mayor and most all of the supervisors in the city of Richmond are Green Party, not Democrats or Republicans, and that formed as a reaction to Chevron controlling Richmond for the last 100 years, and people got tired of it. So it's a very strong community-based organization, and they said, we want something other than oil in this town. So the government there welcomed us with open arms. We're going to be building a plant in the port of Richmond. A lot of people don't know Richmond has a port. And we're going to be taking food processing waste from all over Richmond. I mean, there's bakeries there that are bigger than my entire farm in Watsonville. And so there's a lot of stuff going to their landfill that their landfill is getting full and now can't take this stuff anymore. So we're going to make that into alcohol, and Richmond is going to be promoting its town to food processors, saying, your waste is going to get taken care of by this alcohol distillery here. You won't have to pay $130 a cubic yard, about the size of this table, for dumping that waste. $130 to get rid of this much waste. So all around, it's a stimulant for the economy. It hires people. It provides lower cost fuel, and people in Richmond need that. And guess what? In Richmond, it's a food desert. There are no supermarkets in Richmond. None. They have to leave the town to buy food unless they want to go to the local liquor store and get something. So the idea that we can produce food in the former nursery lands that used to be in Richmond, and that food can be available within the town, organic, grown by people in Richmond, using the byproducts from the alcohol plant, is extremely appealing to the city fathers.
Absolutely, and that's only the beginning. There's a endless list of benefits that all are related to each other, whether it's the agriculture process and the fact that, you know, we do consume some of this food and we want to have a cycle of everything not only going into our bodies but coming out and compost and using co-products for composting that don't add additional gases. So I know that you're...
Yes, to the landfill, right?
Yeah, to the landfills. So not to mention the social benefits and the educational benefits, the modeling, the list just goes on.
The job
and on
training.
and on.
You know, we expect to be training urban farmers at the 25-acre farm we're planning with the Richmond plant to use the byproducts. And those urban farmers will find work. Urban farming is an exploding job, you know, description now. And we hope to be hiring a lot of those people in other alcohol plants around the country that have a farm associated with them.
Great. Let's take a look at the Blume car. You have an ethanol running car at your facility. There it is. It's
yes, this was donated by one of our shareholders. It's not a Prius, but it's a Honda Insight. And he asked, well, can you convert this car to alcohol? Because my daughter thinks it's ugly and she won't take it. So he was in Ohio, and we put one of our conversion kits on it, which was, I don't know, $300 or something. And it'll run on alcohol or gas now, either one. You put whatever you want in the tank, just ignore it. The computer takes care of it. And he drove it all the way across country on alcohol, stopping at the 3,000 alcohol stations across the U.S. He was able to find them and stop at them and bring it all the way out here without using any gasoline whatsoever. So we use that to demonstrate alcohol-powered vehicles, and its emissions are virtually unmeasurably low, and it's a pretty exciting car to drive around.
right. So it's not like a flex fuel vehicle, which can run either.
Oh, no, it is.
Oh,
The
so,
conversion kit makes it a flex fuel vehicle.
so you sell the conversion kit that people can use to convert their cars either to run, is it
Any amount,
85% or
no, any
100%?
amount of alcohol and
up
gas.
to 100%.
Yes.
And then if you need to switch it, when you're nowhere near a source for that, you can switch it over and run it on regular.
You just put the regular gas in the tank and the thing automatically
It
adjusts.
automatically.
Now, this is to remedy the situation for vehicles that didn't come that way from the factory. Since 1994, the United States has been making flex fuel vehicles that will run on both alcohol and gas. It used to be a small number, but because the EPA gave credit to the car companies for every alcohol-enabled vehicle, they were able to build more SUVs without penalties. So it was a devil's bargain, you might say. But since 2000, the car companies finally said, well, we're not going to make a flex fuel and a normal. Let's just make them all flex fuel. And what they have in the software that runs the car is a switch. So if you plug in a laptop and you go into the software of the car, it says flex fuel, yes or no, and you just click yes, and it's flex fuel.
Oh.
So it sniffs the exhaust. It sees how much oxygen's in it and adjusts the air-fuel mixture, because alcohol needs less oxygen than gasoline because it's built in.
So you're saying that every car built after
2000
is equipped with the software
and just has to have it turned on.
and just needs to have it turned on.
Yeah.
And at the pump now, we get, what, about 15% or not even?
Gasoline has been being sold since the 90s with 10% alcohol in it to reduce the toxins. Most of the country is now running on 15% alcohol because under the Obama administration, with lots of fighting, we've got increased to there. But the EPA, prior to our current government, is anticipating going to 30% alcohol as a standard. Now that's really significant because 30% of our gasoline comes from the Middle East. Can you imagine if 30% of our fuel came from our own farmers' alcohol?
Yes.
And we could say to the Middle East, you know, You can keep that black stuff. We don't really need it anymore. And by the way, we're pulling our military out because it's costing us a lot of money. And, we'd rather spend that on pools and parks and, libraries. And so, adios, guys, take care of your own problems.
Indeed.
So, yes, 30% less fuel would mean no more dependence on the Middle East for anything if we were using alcohol. And every car on the road today, every single one, can use 30% alcohol with no modifications whatsoever.
So if you have an older car, or if you just don't want to deal with the software, you can, if we had access to 30%, we could use it with no problem right now.
And the country of Brazil runs about 30% alcohol right now, and they have cars going all the way back to the 60s. They don't have any conversion kits needed. All the cars can run on 30% alcohol, and they've been doing this for decades, and it's absolutely proven. So it's a travesty that the oil companies are trying to make us test our current vehicles to see if they'll run on 30%, when we have the example of Brazil doing it. And I know Brazil doesn't have very popular cars. I mean, they're made by weird companies like Ford and GM and Volkswagen, ones you've never heard of, right? But it's the very same vehicles they sell here, except that they all can run on alcohol because they're fuel injected. It's that simple.
And it's, from what I understand, better for the vehicle. Cleaner.
Oh, yeah.
You don't have the problems with residue building up. You don't have obvious with the exhaust, but you don't have a lot of the internal workings of the problems that
gasoline causes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know how you got to change your oil, right? It turns black. And so then it's not lubricating well, and you got to change the oil. Well, with alcohol, your oil never turns black, ever. The inside of the cylinders have no carbon, and that carbon is like microscopic sandpaper. It wears out the rings in the car, and so that's why you have to keep changing the oil. But with alcohol, instead of changing every 5,000 or 6,000 miles, you might go 30,000 miles between oil changes, and that's only because certain parts of the oil evaporate and you need to renew that, But remember, this also means our air pollution issues are near zero. So if you look at the air in Beijing right now, running on gasoline and diesel, they have 3 new cancers in China that come from car exhaust that no one has ever seen before. And some days you can barely see the sun from all the car exhaust and diesel exhaust. Many countries around the world are now banning diesel from being sold at all because it's so toxic. Germany has like 30 cities now that you can't drive a diesel vehicle in. California actually is planning on banning diesel vehicles starting this year and phasing out all of them in 5 years. So,
well, tell us about the diesel conversion project that you're doing in Watsonville.
Well, yeah, we had a really exciting project we started with the Pajaro Valley School District. They gave us a school bus because they know how toxic diesel is, and they don't want their kids breathing the smoke from an idling school bus. So we had a very restrictive test. They said, we don't want you to do anything to the bus, no mechanical changes at all. We just want you to formulate a fuel that will run a diesel engine on alcohol. And everybody says that's impossible. Well, we did some initial trials, and it worked pretty well. But of course, to really get it to work perfectly, we do have to make some modifications. So that's the next step. And we're hoping to get back to that and prove that we can make it work perfectly with an alcohol blend, with making minor adjustments to the engine. That's the next step.
And you can only imagine the health benefits to all the kids that are hanging around these school buses all the time.
Oh, the UN has studied that. The carcinogens and mutagens that come out of diesel are really vile.
Yeah. Well, I really wanted to skip down to show those solar panels. You're setting up your greenhouses with these. They're actually a pink color. It's number 26, and they let in a certain amount of light for the plants themselves and capture what the plants don't need.
That's correct.
And it was developed at UCSC.
And it fits with our philosophy of never let anything go to waste.
Right.
So these panels are going up on our greenhouse right now, and they grab the blue and yellow light in rough terms and send that to the grid, because we're all hooked onto the grid, you know. And the red light and some of the other wavelengths come through, and the plants use those to grow. So we get equal plant growth, you know, no loss of crop volume in our greenhouses. But because we're also making power, well, for instance, these cannabis operations that need to use lights to extend day length and stuff, well, they'd be making their own power that they would then put into the grid and then be able to use. Right now, they can't get enough power to run their operations, so it's a practical solution, and it allows you to make power in places that might be far away from a grid.
Right. And it's just so amazingly brilliant to have the technology to be able to separate out the forms of light and to capture them and to use them for each designated purpose.
And Soliculture, the company that builds these panels, is a spin-off from UC Santa Cruz.
Right.
And I gotta emphasize that our county, Santa Cruz County, is becoming the ag tech capital of the world.
Wonderful.
We keep coming up with innovations here that spread other places, and this is just one of them.
That's great, and thank you for integrating it with your operation and being so aware and on top of all of these developments that contribute to everything that you're doing. I'd like to schedule a follow-up session with you because there's so much here that we didn't cover today. I have photos of a lot of your greenhouse modeling processes, and each can have discussion all of their own. And so we'll have you back again soon, and we'll take a look at that and your compost procedures. But thank you so much for being here today to share information about your life's work and what you do to provide communities a model to not only work together and to create abundance, but also to help get us out of a lot of the problems we're facing and our children are facing for a cleaner future of natural processes.
And Sheri, we do have tours for, in the local area here occasionally. You can get a hold of us at Blume Distillation.com. That's Blume.
Blume, BlumeDistillation.com.
And get on our mailing list, and we'll let you know when we're having a tour or an event at our place where you can see what we're doing.
All right, that sounds fantastic. Thank you once again so much, and we'll look forward to having you here again soon.
Thank you, Sheri.
Another. one more minute.
Here we go.
Great. Well, we have also a picture of U.S. ethanol production, number 13, that shows us just how much ethanol is produced in the Midwest.
Well, it's quite a bit, but the thing that we really want to emphasize is that alcohol can really be a total solution. We can actually, with the land we have and growing algae in the ocean, which is good for the ocean, and using food processing waste, we can replace all the gasoline and diesel. We can replace all the electricity made by coal and nuclear, and we can get rid of all the oil for heating. No problem at all, because we're just grabbing solar energy and putting it to use, and there's nothing to stop us from doing it technologically. It's only political.
Thank you so much. I'm Sheri Ross. This is SLV Life, and I'll see you here again soon.